Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Alexis. Thank you, Andrew. I'd like to also just thank my team because the one thing that I've had here is nobody works for me. We all work with one another. And Rachel is one of my people. She's actually my succession plan. I finally, after many years, have found somebody that I have the courage and the confidence who will take on the work that I've done for the last 45 years into the future. So this is Rachel. I have Ben over here is my tech person. He gets hysterical phone calls or emails with, I need some help now. And poor old Ben has been absolutely wonderful. So thank you, Ben. Rosie is somewhere. She is my bookkeeper. I'm not sure where she is, but you'll see her at lunchtime. She helps me to keep the books in order. And she's been with us for like 25 years or something like this. I have two other team members. Kylie is not in today, nor is Ash. So I have a really wonderful team of people who support me, who sort of take my phone and put it on to do not disturb for me, this sort of thing, who are always there when I get a little bit off balance and a little bit hysterical. So I'm very lucky to have a great team. And then Alan, of course, many of you know Alan. He was really excited when he saw the list of people here because, I know him, or his dad or his grandfather, probably. Yes. So we've been here 48 years. We haven't used chemicals, as I said earlier. And what we've done is we've used compost. We make our own compost. We make our own compost tea. But with this project, what we did was we were able to get product that was pre-made, which was from Gippsland Organics down at Dutson Downs. And I've worked with them for probably 15 years or more to help them develop a quality windrow compost. Now, if for any of you, if you can get the material from Dutson Downs directly, then I would do so because it's one of the best of on this side of like in the Gippsland area, it's one of the best because they do take some care with getting their biology up, keeping their temperatures controlled, and keeping it aerobic. Once it leaves Dutson Downs, then it can be problematic as to what happens to it in terms of introduction of material from other sources and also synthetic chemistry. And I just cannot imagine why, when you have a high quality compost, you then go and add synthetic chemistry to it. It just doesn't make sense to me. So Dutson Downs provided us with material. Charlton feedlot manure. Feedlot manure doesn't have a fit-for-purpose product at the moment. So we took aged manure from the feedlot at Charlton and brought it across here just as a pure product, just straight from the feedlot. But it was something like 18 to 24 months old, so it was aged. The other material we had was through help from CORE was the FOGO that came directly from one of the sites in the suburban Melbourne, came out here fresh so that Alexis and his team were able to get it within sort of 24 hours of it arriving in the system to be able to start doing the odor work. What else did we have? What other source did we have?
Treatment 5 was the blend 50%.
Oh, yes. So what we had, and was sort of some of the work that we were trying to do to get some information for Sustainability Victoria, but for the farmers so that they had fit-for-purpose product, was to take these two waste streams, which was the FOGO, the food organic, green organic, and then the feedlot manure, which at the moment really neither of them were fit for purpose. So how could we use these products and make a fit for purpose product, or more than one, that was useful for farmers? So what we did was we started to blend. So we bought the material here. We got all of the biology, the chemistry, all of the information that we required as individual streams. And then we started to blend. So we blended 25, 75, 50, 50, 75, 25, etc. Through windrows, and then also through small compost rings that are about a cubic meter, where we make high quality compost for compost tea making. So windrows make really good compost to put out as compost, but you can't sort of get the control over a windrow that you can over a compost ring, to be able to have the confidence that the microbiology that is in the compost in your compost ring is good enough, high enough, diverse enough to be able to replace synthetic chemistry, because that's what we're wanting to do. So this is why we have our workshops every 2 months and showing people how to make high quality compost rings. And when you go for your walk around after lunch, you'll actually see one of my team will show you the compost rings. And so from a compost ring, what we do is we are very careful about our carbon to nitrogen ratio, which is 20 to 30 to 1. And with that ratio, you're able to get that composting process going on in a time frame that's useful for us as farmers. Because everything will compost over time. We're on a carbon planet. But sometimes it might take 10,000 years or 1,000,000 years. Well, we really don't have that time. But so what we do with the compost ring is, if we get our carbon to nitrogen ratios correct, and we get it to a moisture level that's around 45, 50%, then we can get a compost, a pasteurization process going through in probably 6 to 8 weeks. Now, once that, so what it's doing, it's going up to temperature. As soon as it gets to around 65 to 70 degrees, then we will turn it and make sure that we keep it aerobic. Because the one thing about good compost that's required for the soil is that it is aerobic. Because we want our soil aerobic. We want our biology aerobic so that it can do the mineralization. Now, within a good soil, you have anaerobes. They have a place, but they're part of the diversity. And so it's important to have both. But what we're after is an aerobic soil, because what we're wanting, certainly in a perennial system, and so this is pasture, fruit trees, grapevines, anything that's a perennial plant requires a fungal dominated system. Now, the other thing that you'll find is a lot of the research that's done, a lot of the peer review research that's done, and this is really interesting. Andrew made the point that we're used to talking to PowerPoints, and I'm talking off the top of my head, so I'm probably going a little bit around. So if there's anything, call me back, but I will get there eventually, right? The thing about, thank you. The thing about having that carbon to nitrogen ratio correct in the soil, and again in a perennial system, we're looking at about 2 parts, 1 to 2 to 5 of carbon to nitrogen, fungi to bacteria in a perennial system. And if we have that, we have the potential for a very active microbial population in the soil to be able to give us the mineralization and the nutrients that our plants require as they require them, when they require them, and at what amounts they require them. And so a lot of the peer-reviewed literature in agriculture is done on already broken soil. So so when you look at those results, you say, oh, well, we can put a whole lot of urea on and we get this response. You can put a whole lot of NPK on, you get this response. You get the response temporarily, because what it's doing, it's destroying the soil microbiology, it's destroying the structure of the soil, and particularly ploughing is the most lethal thing to soil microbiology and also to our ability to be able to feed the world in the future. So what I'd like to put to you is that we start to look at minimal disturbance of the soil, that the only disturbance that we have in our soil is to aerate. And you'll find Alan has the yeoman's plough on the tractor out here somewhere. And there are other ways to drill the soil to aerate, but we're not turning the soil over. And as long as we don't turn the soil over, that minimum amount of damage that we do in those drill lines is very rapidly closed across, because fungi will grow quite quickly across a gap and fill in. So what we're looking at is getting, as I put it, what nature wants is 100% cover 100% of the time. And if we do that, and then we use our drill lines, etc., to pasture crop, if this is what we want to do. But to use these products now that we can have, that we know are in that aerobic environment, that they haven't gone aerobic, they haven't gone anaerobic, they are aerobic, and that they go through the pasteurization process into stability and maturity. Now, when you have a compost that is a mixture, or when you've got your raw materials, you get a lot of heat. That's the bacteria functioning on the simple sugars that are readily available and readily broken down. The bacteria drive the composting process. And it doesn't matter whether it's manure or whether it's FOGO or what it is. It's the bacteria, and this is why you need that fungal to bacteria ratio, and also that carbon to nitrogen ratio, because the bacteria will drive nitrogen cycling. The fungi will drive the carbon cycling very much. And so if we can get those ratios right, and it's not difficult to do, if we can get those right, then we go through this pasteurization process where we get heat, we turn, cools down, comes up again, keeps coming up, until it'll get to a stage where the major conversion of the labile, of the freely available carbon is broken down. And then we start to get to a situation where it cools down. Now, that is not compost. That is reduced waste. It is not fit for purpose. What we need to do then is to allow that material, because there's still heat in it, there's still activity in it, there's still material being broken down. What we need to do is to allow that material then to sit and mature. Now, if it's one of our rings, we like to let it mature for probably 12 to 16 weeks. If it's a windrow that might be, 100 meters long, 3 or 4 or 5 meters wide, after it's come back to temperature, then we would like to see compost, what's called compost, after about 26 to 28 to 32 weeks. So if you're going to be buying material that from the commercial people, they don't have the facilities to be able to hold compost. Duts and Downs does, and they're now holding any of the stuff that I'm involved with. They're now holding it for 26 to 28 weeks. But if you're going to get material that is from an area where they don't have the facilities to hold the compost, it's going to come to you hot, and that is toxic. It's toxic to humans, to animals, and to the soil. So if you can only get material that's hot, then my suggestion to you is to have them put them into a windrow for you, and allow it to cool down and mature. You'll find that the volume will go down by about 1/3 to 1/2. But at the end of that time, when it's fully cold, you have the most beautiful black gold. And you can do anything with it. And because it is fully microbial, it's now stable. The nitrogen levels and the carbon levels are now stable. And it means that you can use it into the soil when you do your delve lines. You can use it as a mulch. It's actually very valuable because it is finished compost. It doesn't have a nitrogen drawdown. When you put young material, if you put straw or hay or some sort of material that is still young, when you put it on the soil or in the soil, the microbiology has to break it down. And they do that, and the nitrifiers and the denitrifiers are the major groups of bacteria that will pull out of the soil into this material to break it down. So this is why you get nitrogen drawdown. So if somebody says, if you're going to put that on, what we do is say, you need mulch. You haven't got enough organic matter. You need mulch. Absolutely. You need mulch. Put it out, but not too thick. Put it out, but then water it with a good compost tea. And drive the microbiology from within the bulk of the mulch. Don't allow it to be taken from the soil. And you can do that with a good compost tea. And this is why we have these workshops to show you how to make the little rings of compost. And Alan will show you this afternoon. A ring will give you, it's about a cubic meter when you start. It ends up about 1/3 of a cubic meter when it's finished. That 1/3 of a cubic meter could probably make, well, it would be spread over about 3 or 4 square meters of your enterprise. But if you make it into compost tea, you can make 25,000 litres of compost tea. So with the material that we're now blending, what we found in our preliminary data is the 50% FOGO with 50%, hang on, feedlot manure. Yeah, the 50-50 blend we found is giving us the most stable carbon to nitrogen ratio. It's giving us probably on preliminary data some of the best crude protein in the leaf material. And so we're now concentrating on this 50-50 blend. Now, when we're talking about putrefaction, putrefaction is purely only a result of anaerobic decomposition. So if you have your raw material, your FOGO or whatever it is, even whatever you've got at home, if you keep it turned and aerated, it will not putrefy. We want it to break down aerobically and organically through microbial activity. And so what we're finding over here with our various windrows, and you can go and have a look at them after lunch, is that 50-50 mix was particularly the one that gave us the decomposition rate that we required in a reasonable time. It gave us the microbial activity that we're looking for in a reasonable time, and the nutrient breakdown, the mineralization, in a reasonable time. And then the stimulation that we saw from the microbiology in the soil was also the best at that 50-50. Now, we used 2 soils. We used farm up at Labatouche, which was a sort of a red stony sort of soil, and then our soil here, which is a clay, a peaty clay. Because this particular property has never seen, in our lifetime, seen synthetic chemistry, the results were quite different from the property up at Labatouche, which was fully ploughed each year, had full NPK application each year, and was, as far as I understand, seeded with a single annual ryegrass. I believe it probably glowed in the dark because the productivity and the activity of the microbes was next to nothing. The soil was biologically dead. Here, it was very, very active. So we saw enormous differences in the results that we got by applying. And what we did was, with our products, when we put our various products, and in your notebooks you'll see the various blends that we used and the individual products that we used. What we found was, and I don't even know where I was going with that one. So we were using, so we were using the blends. And that's right. And so what we found was the soil here at Agpath, as I said earlier, reacted differently. And so it's going to give us an opportunity to know how we can use compost in a fully conventional agricultural system and in a system that is regenerative agriculture. Now, with information that we got from farmers and people around, we applied the equivalent of 3 tonnes per hectare on the pastures and 14 tonnes per hectare on the vegetables to do our research work. And so all our results are based on those application rates. Now, at the end of the day, we will need to have a look at whether that 3 tonnes per hectare was an appropriate amount. Certainly on our farm, it's more than enough. On a fully conventional damaged soil, it probably isn't enough. It may have to go higher, but then it's available. But rather than saying, well, okay, I have to lift the volume of the compost, we could start to say this compost can be used as a spread, as a distribution across the surface, and then watered in with compost tea, and we'll get the benefit of the compost tea mineralizing, helping the biology in the compost tea, helping to mineralize the compost that's going to be produced in very large amounts. So what we feel is the feedlot manure, which has no source has no fit for purpose at the moment, and the FOGO, which is not fit for purpose at the moment. If it's put together in a 50-50 blend, then allowed to compost aerobically as a thermal aerobic compost in a windrow, and windrows that are going to be aerobic all of the time need to be no more than 1.5 meters high. They can be as wide as you have equipment to be able to turn them, but farmers can do this if they can get this material from the stations that are going to be producing it, but have a space on your own property. You just need one windrow. And what we do with ours is, because we just have the bucket on the front of the tractor, our windrows are 2 buckets depth wide. So it means we can go in, turn, and we've turned the whole width, but no more than 1.2 to 1.5 meters high. That way, and all of this is peer reviewed. The data is all there. Everything that I'm telling you today, I can give you the references for. What you'll find is, with that 1.2 to 1.5 meter high, and if you have a good texture to the material that you're composting, that you've got wood chips and things like that, you'll find that oxygen will get down to the base of that pile, or whether it's a pile or whether it's a windrow. But once you go higher, then you're going to get anaerobic conditions starting to form in the middle of the base of those windrows. So when you make your windrows, and you can make them out of buying in this material or being given it, however this has been going to be distributed in the future, I don't know. You can bring it in. But the other thing that you can do is use all the waste on your property as well. And so if you can get access to feedlot manure, you get access to FOGO that's already been mulched. Now, one of the things you'll see in your booklets, the first load of FOGO we got, and this is where the councils and the legislators and whoever has this role is going to have to be really, vigilant or tough on the material that goes into the bins for food organic and green organic. The first load that we got was about 34 or 40 tonnes of FOGO. We took out over a tonne of contamination, and we did it by hand. And it's taken us over 100 hours, 3 to 4 to 5 people, just going through every piece of that FOGO. And it comes back to the councils being very tough on how people use their bins. Now, a lot of that is going to be screened out, and then it's mulched at the site, and then that mulch can come out and be used. Now, that mulch coming out is fresh, it's hot. But if that is put, for example, if you can make on your farm a windrow taking that material which is hot, and then taking feedlot manure, particularly if it's aged, and then you make your own compost, you don't need any additions on your farm. What we've found with what you'll find with all of the industries, the peak bodies know how much NPK comes off per litre, per gram, per kilogram, per whatever, however it's measured. They can give you those figures. What you need to get with all of this material that's coming in, what you need to do is to get to the situation where the organic matter that you're returning to your property is greater than the NPK that you're taking off as your product. And you can find that. Just phone your peak body and ask them, how much NPK comes off per litre of milk? It's all there. How much NPK comes off per kilogram per hectare of pasture? It's all there. It's all there. The data's there. Find out what it is. And so then what you do is you build up your soil using these products that are going to be available by adding them to your soil, by aerating your soil, not turning it over, not ploughing, stop ploughing, don't plough. It's destructive. Putting this material on and then learning how to make a good compost tea, and then use your compost tea to wash these nutrients in. The bacteria and the fungal populations are all present in a soil that is stable. Not a soil that has been destroyed, but a soil that is stable. And as Eric said, or alluded to, it takes time. Nature has had several billion years to make a good soil. We've destroyed it in a couple of hundred. So to get it back to where it should be, it's not going to happen tomorrow. But we've turned properties around that have been absolutely broken. We've turned them around in less than 2 years. So they've taken on, we are going to take on the paradigm of no synthetic inputs. And we're going to use the regenerative agriculture style of managing our property and using these resources that are going to become available, or already available, but are going to become more, hopefully more mainstream, because they'll be able to be, we'll know how to use them, and introduce that into the soil that of your pastures or whatever it is that you're doing. Now, with agriculture, with vegetable growing, it's slightly different, because the seeds that we use, the methodology that we use to grow bulk, not very nutritious vegetables, is based on sort of post-World War high inputs of ammonium nitrate that during the war killed people, and now they're putting it in the soil to kill microbes. I don't know where they went with that one. So what we're wanting to do is, in agriculture, because now the seed bank is so depleted, it's so narrow in the genetic pool, the commercial growers have to be able to make a living, have to do a lot of damage to their soil each time. But if we can have them look at trying to incorporate organic matter. And the reason why soils break down so quickly when they're this synthetic NPK, urea, whatever, is absolutely toxic to soil microbiology. You might get a little hit for a short time, But what you're doing is over time, you're killing off your microbiology. So you're going from a soil to a dirt. And once you have dirt, the only way that your plants can grow is to have synthetic chemistry added to them. But it's a no-win situation. And as I mentioned earlier, there are millions of hectares now of agricultural land around the world that is no longer arable, can no longer be used for growing plants for food. And so we're now going into a situation where those countries are going into really severe poverty because their soil has been destroyed. So what can we do for them by looking at material like we've got here, and we look at our own properties here in Australia? What we need to be, or what we need governments to say, we want to pay a farmer for quality as well as quantity. We don't get paid for quality. We get paid for quality. What was interesting, I was doing a talk for William Angus to a whole group of chefs. And I looked up a paper. I was looking up a lot of papers, but I looked up one particular paper. Spinach, silver beet, loses 75% of its nutrition within 48 hours of being harvested. Now, if we're getting our silver beet from 10,000 kilometers away, there's no nutrition in it. We have to rethink how we're going to feed the planet in the future. We're told we're going to have 9 billion people. There's not a shortage of food in the world. There's an inequity in the distribution, and there's certainly an increasing decrease in the quality. So if we've got all of this material that we can use, and we come in and we put it into our agricultural system by increasing the organic matter in the soil and trying to have minimal damage and interaction in the soil through pasture cropping, for example, even for vegetables you can do it, certainly for all of our grains. What we can do is we can build up the organic matter, but the particular aspect that is important in being able to keep us as farmers on the land, but people on this planet into the future, is getting the mycorrhizal fungal biomass building up. Now, mycorrhizae are a particular type of fungus that live in association with living plant roots. And so in a pasture, if you have an undisturbed pasture that you simply feed with compost tea or compost or our materials that we're trying to develop through this project, and onto and into and building up the organic matter in your soil, and not using any NPK, using things like compost tea or even worm juice, and getting that microbial activity on that organic matter that we're putting there. What we're doing is we're building up a mycorrhizal biomass that can go down 30 centimeters as the roots. They'll follow the roots down. So the more aerated the soil, the more organic matter we have in the soil, the further down the roots will go. Therefore, the greater the bulk of root and mycorrhizal biomass we'll be able to build up. Now, what that will do is several things. We can do this with 100% cover 100% of the time. So what we do with that biomass, it's holding water, again, as Eric alluded to. It holds an enormous amount of water. Now, there's some work by Christine Jones a number of years ago. She was saying that increasing the organic matter by just 1% saves over 150,000 litres of water per hectare in an average soil annually. You increase your organic matter by 4%, you can save over 500,000 hectares, litres of water per hectare annually. They're huge figures. They're real figures. So if we're doing that and we get that water holding capacity through the mycorrhizal fungal biomass, we're going to be able to not have to use as much water. We can rely on precipitation, because the precipitation is not going to be running off. It's going to be held in that fungal biomass. So it means the soil is going to cool down. It'll be much cooler than a bare soil. Now, if you've got a cooler soil and you've got roots that are going down further of your pasture or whatever your cropping system happens to be, then you're going to have the resilience to be able to cope with the dry periods and the cold periods and even the wet periods that you can't when you've got a broken soil, when you've got a chemical soil. So there are so many advantages of having a system that's 100% cover 100% of the time, delving into that, making your drill lines to plant your wheat or triticaleas or whatever it happens to be, or your grapevines, having material that's now becoming available in greater and greater amounts, where you either use it directly and you apply your compost tea, or you windrow it yourself and start to make an even higher quality product. For all of that increase in organic matter, you're going to get increase in productivity, because the microbiology is going to be going through that huge mineralization process. And when you apply chemistry does not drive soil health. It doesn't drive microbial activity. Microbial activity drives the chemistry that's plant available. So when we have organic matter and we put the organic matter onto the soil, if we put it onto a broken soil, no microbiology, it stays there. It doesn't break down, because the whole thing about organic matter is that it is not, and it's not plant available. So you can put, if you've got a broken soil and you can put as much organic matter as you like on, it's not going to go anywhere. It's going to sit there because there's no microbiology to break it down, to break those organic molecules down into the inorganic form to be able to make them plant available. Now you'll find in your handouts, and I forgot to say, there's actually some of the electronic nose information in there as well. But also in your handout, there's a little schematic that I have drawn to show you the mineralization of how you can, when you put your organic material on, and it's not going to keep your plants alive unless you've got the microbiology to mineralize it. And so it's in there for you to look at. The other thing that's in your handout is the soil food web, which you can get off the web, of the World Wide Web. But what I've done is I've made it into our own Australian soil food web. So there's a bilby and there's a kookaburra. So you're very welcome to take that off my website if you ever want to use it. But what it's showing you, you can see it's all joined up with arrows. So when you put a synthetic chemical onto your soil, those arrows all disappear. So it means that the various groups of microbiology that are involved, nature put them there to do that job, that are involved in breaking down the organic matter into an inorganic form, then those being eaten so that they release the plant available nitrogen and phosphorus and all of the elements that are in the inorganic form, then your plants can use them. So a full microbiologically active soil in a regen paradigm, all of the different titles, all of these titles just mean caring for the soil. If you care for the soil and you have access to these products that are being developed, and then you have your compost tea and you have a soil that is full of microbiology and not synthetic chemistry, then the costs you'll also see in your booklet. We actually went to some of the chemical companies and said, okay, what is a vegetable synthetic chemical input? What's it going to cost? Well, it appears that it's between about $600 and $900 per hectare per crop. If it's a pasture, I can't remember the figures, but $200 or $300 maybe. But you go down on the next one down and have a look at what the compost tea is. It's it's less than 10 cents per hectare. I work with farmers all around Australia, in the UAE, in Egypt, in Fiji, in Zambia, in Malawi, in Illinois. And they're all farmers who are wanting to use the sorts of products that we're talking about here as a replacement for synthetic chemistry, because they want to increase quality, they want to increase the ability for the planet to be able to feed people into the future. At the moment, there are some figures coming out of some of the world organizations that say by 2100, we will have no agricultural land left on this planet that is able to grow plants that are able to be eaten. 2100, where are we now? 23? Doesn't leave many years for us to turn around. We have to turn around. And we have the opportunity to do that with the work that we're doing with the people who are here today, the work that we're doing to try and show how recycled material can be put back into a soil agricultural system at very little cost to the farmer. And I'm a farmer, and I get peed off when somebody comes and tells me I have to go and buy this at X number of dollars per litre, when I know I can go and make a good compost pile and have a really high quality product that will do 3 times, 1,000 times what this product is going to do. So all in all, with these products, we seem to find that the 50-50 seems to be giving us, and certainly in response or raw data, the best results. What we're trying to do then is to say, keep your soil aerated. Don't plough it. Use something like the drill lines, like the yeoman's plough effect, and work in that. Have a look at using your materials. Lottie. Using the materials that are going to be coming readily available, and then anything that's on your own property as well. And then look at this concept, which is what nature has set it all up as, looking after and building a mycorrhizal fungal biomass in your soil that will hold the nutrients. You don't have any leaching. You don't have any build-up of unwanted chemistry when you've got a biological system. I hear constantly the farmers say to them, oh, well, we're being told to put lime on. We've got to put lime on because we're acidifying. Well, you're acidifying really because of the use of ammonium nitrate as a fertilizer. But you're acidifying because you're not allowing the mycorrhizal fungal exudate, which is called glomelin, which holds orders of magnitude more carbon than does the humus. But the other thing about glomelin is that one of its exudates is calcium oxalate, which is immediately plant available. And being immediately plant available, you will find that with a good microbial biomass, then the actual pH of the soil in which your plant is growing, not the pH of the soil when you just take a soil test, the pH of the soil in which your plant is growing, which is the pH within the rhizosphere, that small area around plant roots, it is actually at the pH that the plant requires. And that's because of the glomelin, it's because of the exudate, the calcium oxalate exudate, and it's because of the fact that with that fungal biomass, you have all of the moisture sitting there, because microbiology requires moisture to be able to multiply. And so what you've got is a cooling soil, you've got deeper roots, you've got microbial activity, you've got fungal activity in the form of the mycorrhizal fungi that's producing it's picking up heaps of phosphorus for you. It's picking up and it's producing all of the calcium that your soil will require. And so you end up with a stable system that you can produce high quality material, whatever it happens to be, wine or pasture or milk, in a system that's costing you next to nothing to maintain. We started off here, you'll see also, the other thing about having a stable soil, you'll see if you happen to come here in the capeweed season, we don't have any capeweed on this property. Because what we've done is we've shifted the fungal to bacterial ratio to be positive for fungi. Yet we are surrounded by a carpet of yellow. I think our neighbours actually must grow capeweed commercially because it's totally yellow. And we have workshops, and we say to the farmer, look, we're in the middle of the road, we've got black gates, you shouldn't have any problems finding us. And they come in and they say, this place is green, all the rest are yellow. Now, what is happening? What we're doing is when you have a fungal-dominated soil in a pasture, the microbiology, you have bacteria that nitrify and denitrify. So they change the molecular context. When you've got weedy species and you have high nitrate nitrogen, you're going to have weeds and you're going to have poor quality pasture in terms of nutrient value. But as soon as you get your pasture or any of your perennials across to fungal dominated, what happens is the microbiology in that little chart that you're looking at, what you'll find is that the nitrogen that's plant available is pretty well in a 1-to-1 ratio, or a little bit predominantly ammonium nitrogen than nitrate nitrogen. So if you've got a perennial pasture or you've got any sort of perennial plant, what you want in your when you have a chemistry test done is you want to see your nitrogen in the ammonium form higher than the nitrogen in the nitrate form in your particular pasture. When you've got that, then you won't have weeds. And some of the weedy species are primary colonizers, and they're also very, very strong indicator plants of what is missing from the top 30 centimeters of your soil. So if you have a look at some of the weedy species that you've got, and then you go into the literature and find out what is that particular plant or weed, as we call it, I like to call them primary colonizers, drawing up from deep in the sand, silt and clay, the mineralization process. And that will tell you what is lacking in that top part of your soil. And so what you can do, instead of saying, oh, well, I've got a weed, I've got to get the glyphosate, get rid of it. No, you don't. It's really important because it's often a medicinal plant for your stock, because animals don't live on grass alone. It's a way that you can say, well, okay, I know what is going on here. I need to get some more organic matter going. I need to get some more compost tea going because I need some more mineralization to be able to give me that particular element that might be low. 5 minutes. Okay, I talk like a tree, don't I? And so with the work that we're doing, when we finally bring out the final report, which will be June 2024 or thereabouts, we hope to be able to give a lot more data about how the available products that are out here can influence the soil's productivity and the pasture or whatever it is that we're growing above ground. We're able to get some figures on that because the product, these products are going to become more and more available in volume. If we then look at sort of closing down the synthetic chemistry products business, which would be, my greatest dream, and start bringing in this material and looking at making good compost teas and applying it so that we get the microbiology back again, I would put it to you that within a year or two of you doing that, your use for synthetic chemistry, as long as you go to your peak body and find out what your NPK removal is, I'd put it to you that you won't need synthetic chemistry. I was, just before COVID, I was asked to go across to Western Australia to talk to grain growers that were in the less than 300 millimetre rainfall area up in northern Western Australia. And these guys came down to Sydney, came down to Perth, and they said, Mary, we're not putting synthetic chemistry on now. We're using compost. I said, well, how can you make enough compost to go over, 10, 15,000 hectares that you're putting out per farm? And they said, oh, no, we're making compost tea. Yeah, well, again, a lot of compost tea. And I said, oh, well, what we're doing is we're buying up the old winery vats, the 25,000, 30,000 litre winery vats, and we're making compost tea. So, because I was banging on about my great 1,000 litre compost tea brewer, and one of them said to me, that Crocodile Dundee thing where he says, this is not a knife, this is a knife. And so they pat me on the head because they're all up there, and they said, Mary, that's not a compost tea brewer, this is a compost tea brewer. And so I said, okay, what's the quality like? Well, on the Sunday, we had the compost tea, we had the workshop where we look at the microbiology. Those guys were making beautiful compost tea. And I can understand why they were happily just crimping off. They now crop high. They don't crop low. They crop high. They just take the heads off. They then come through with a crimper and push all of the material down, and then they go through with copious amounts of compost tea, and they get that that breakdown very, very rapidly, so that when they're ready, then some of them now are actually pasture cropping. So as soon as the wheat comes off, they've got whatever their intermediate crop is already through the ground. So there's no fallow. Compost tea, and they're happy little chappies. They're doing it. They said, yeah, we can do it. We just did it. And so I guess what I'm saying to you here is you can do it. Have the courage to do it. You don't have to take your whole farm into a regenerative. Do it paddock by paddock, and see how it goes. And every soil is different. Every season is different. Every environment and need from a farmer is different. But if you then start and say, I'm going to become a soil farmer, not a dairy farmer, but a soil farmer. I'm going to look after my soil, and then you can halve your dairy herd, because we've actually had that happen. They've gone to regen, they've halved their dairy herd, their milk production has gone up. The amount of time that they've had to spend has gone down. It's doable because there are people doing it. Yeah, you can all do it. And we're going to have these products here available for distribution. And as I say, use them straight as you get them, as long as they're cold. They must be matured. And if they're not matured, then get the whoever's delivering it to put it out in a windrow for you and allow it to cool down and mature. And that might take, if it's still got heat in it, that might take another 28 weeks. It doesn't matter how long it takes, because at the same time that material is breaking down still and becoming absolutely so rich in nutrients. Be careful about using manure of whatever form straight, because it shifts because it's high particularly in nitrogen initially. But what it does is it changes the soil microbiology to nitrate. Right? So just be aware. If you're going to use a manure, then I would put it to you if you're going to use it immediately, I would put it to you to put a fungal food in it, which is humate or something. But if you have access to manure, then I would suggest you mix it with a carbon source and get it to actually turn into compost, not a manure. Because as soon as you get that nitrogen as a nitrate higher than nitrogen as the ammonium form, then you're going to get weedy species. And you'll get a drop in the diversity in your pasture species. So that's just one of the things to be careful. And that's why we're looking at blending the feedlot manure with a high nutrient, and we'll be able to go ahead with a really good product.